If you've noticed the new grille up front with the thicker chrome bar, or if you've noticed the new tail lights with the clear lens treatment and that smoked effect, or if you've noticed the big spoiler on the roof, or maybe if you've noticed the new wheels that this car is rolling on, then probably you will understand that this is the updated 2022 Maruti Suzuki XL6.
It also has a new glasshouse, which cuts the UV rays by up to 80%, which on this hot Bengaluru afternoon feels like a welcome change.
It's not just on the outside but also on the inside that you will notice a few changes. Like for example, there is a new 7-inch touchscreen system. The touchscreen system was always there. This is now larger in size. But of course, in today's day and age, 7 inches, it may not sound like much, but they couldn't go any bigger than that, because if they would have to redesign the AC vents as well. We had pointed this out in the original review of the XL6 as well, that the way the AC vents are designed, this is the size restriction that they've had for the infotainment. And just to go a little bit nitpicking, if you were to look at the infotainment from the back, you will notice that it actually isn't right in the center of the dashboard. It is a bit offset, and it's also a little bit tilted towards the passenger, not towards the driver. But in terms of the usability, in terms of how it looks to the driver, it doesn't hamper anything. All the usability is very easy. The big tile layout, it's customizable, it's easy to use. And there is also now a 360-degree camera, which using the screen you can customize, you can select different views. This is something that we saw on the Baleno, and it now makes its way here as well. Speaking of the usability, the infotainment does feel a bit laggy. Should have done with faster responses. Even the voice commands that it gets, the limited set of voice commands that it gets, it sometimes takes a while to understand what you're saying, sometimes doesn't understand it very easily. But again, I'm using Apple CarPlay, wired Apple CarPlay, so I'm okay. I'm using Siri, I'm using the CarPlay, so I'm not really using the screen all that much. So I'm pretty alright with the kind of responses it's giving me right now. This screen and this connected tech is also ALEXA enabled, so if you have that device at home, you can simply ask it what the fuel status is. You can also ask it to start the car, pre-cool the cabin for you. I think that's a very thoughtful feature. You don't have to go to an app or do it over a key or anything of that sort. Simply telling your device will do it for you. You do have to enter a PIN, so that that's an added layer of safety, so that other people will not be able to access your vehicle via the smart device. But of course, if you're talking at home, your kids are also going to listen to that PIN code, and they might still mess around with it, but it's a good feature to have. You can pre-cool the cabin, you can start the hazard lights, you can ask it to honk if you're looking for it in a parking spot or something. So adding that Alexa layer and adding these skills, I think just adds a whole feature list to the vehicle without making it too complicated, which I quite like. Honestly, what I'm more excited about are the changes made to the safety features and the convenience features. Like for example, you get tire pressure monitoring now. Its readout is on the screen itself. It does take a while, you'll have to go through a few menus, but it will tell you which wheel is losing air in the event of a puncture. So this is a good system to have, a good safety feature to have. The other updated safety bit is the presence of 4 airbags. 2 in the dashboard, of course, and 2 on the side of the front seats. So essentially, the XL6 continues to care only about the front row occupants, not so much about the rear occupants for whom you really stretched your budget over the Ertiga and decided to go with this XL6 instead, choosing those captain seats over the bench. I think it was time for 6 airbags. They should have done that. I pointed this out even in the first review of the XL6, and they ought to have done that now. Anyway, what you do get in return though is ventilated seats at the front. The ventilation function, it works quite well. It has 3 levels of adjustment, but at its highest setting, it does get a bit noisy. All that noise is concentrated right behind your ear, so it can get a bit irritating on long distance journeys, especially if you are not playing any music.
So that sums up the cosmetic and the functionality changes. The dashboard, its stone finish inlays, the twin pot instrumentation with the MID, and the seats in the second and third row remain unchanged. There's no tumble for the second row seats, and the room for the second and third row is the same as before. So is the boot volume.
What has gone up, however, is the weight. I'm talking about the car. 20 to 35 kilos depending on the variant that you choose. Now it's all down to the additional equipment and also the updates under the hood.
You continue to get a 1.5 litre 4-cylinder naturally aspirated petrol engine which is marginally down on power and torque, though the difference isn't noticeable. The engine is now dubbed the K15C, which essentially points to the updates inside the engine, like the dual jet configuration, lesser frictional losses, and improved efficiency.
The big news though is the automatic transmission. The lethargic 4-speed automatic has been replaced with a new 6-speed torque converter.
In typical Maruti Suzuki fashion, the new gearbox is also designed for optimum fuel economy. Given the peaky nature of this engine, you're forced to be in the 4 to 6000 RPM zone to make progress. Of course, you wouldn't floor the pedal on a car like this, but if you did, you would notice that the progress in the first 2 gears is quite good, but the build-up in the 3rd, 4th and 5th gears feels quite dull in that 4 to 6000 RPM band. Interestingly, this slow progress suggests that the 0 to 100 time could actually be slower than this engine with the 4-speed auto. The gearbox upshifts rapidly to save fuel too, but has to often drop 2 gears to pull an overtake or negotiate a gap in traffic. This reflects in the single-digit fuel economy figure we got in the city. But do note that this wasn't up to our usual testing standards, so more on that with a road test. But in a nutshell, the 6-speed gearbox gets the work done like its 4-speed counterpart, but doesn't quite excite and doesn't quite seem worth the long wait.
The paddle shifters themselves, they feel a bit flimsy, these plastic paddles. I don't know if the camera is picking it up, but you can hear that sound. I'm not too impressed with how they feel, but they work just as intended. Every time you start out with the automatic, there's every chance that you will engage the manual mode more often than the drive mode because it is an additional selection on the gear selector, and if you were to just pull the gear selector all the way down, you will be going into the manual mode. Anyway, so if you are in drive mode, it indicates a D on the MID, but that's it. It will not tell you what gear you are in when you are on the move. Whenever it's downshifting, upshifting, you will not know what gear you are driving in. It's only in the manual mode that you will know which gear you are in. Now, the manual mode is activated in 2 ways, one with the gear selector like I said, and the other is the paddle shifters. Now, this is essentially for you to take quick manual control over the gearbox, maybe when you want better engine braking or if you want to pull a quick overtake. Otherwise, it will not stay there for too long. It will move back into drive mode and then continue with things on its own, making decisions on its own. If you want to stick to manual mode, you will have to put it in the M mode on the gear selector. And when you do that, it will also let you go all the way to 6000 RPM, which is just a little below the red line. It's also where the peak power is. And it will let you stay there. It will keep making these little chimes every now and then to tell you that you might want to upshift. You are staying at the top of the revs for too long. So it can sometimes confuse you. Is the gearbox trying to tell you to upshift or downshift, or is it the speed? So it can sometimes happen, but once you get used to it, it shouldn't be much of a problem. Now, some of you did reach out to us asking us about the braking manners. I think the braking is quite good. Yes, with a full house, it sometimes needs a firm push of the brake pedal, but otherwise the brakes feel nice and progressive. I like the highway manners of this car as well. The steering weighs up nicely at speed. There is no bouncy feel even with an empty car like I'm driving right now. It doesn't feel bouncy, it doesn't feel like it's swaying too much. Lane changes are actually quite easy, doesn't feel unnerving at all, even at triple-digit speed. So overall, the dynamics are quite sorted, and with those 16-inch wheels, the ride quality isn't hampered much. The ride quality is still comparable to the outgoing 15 inches. So overall, I'm pretty impressed with the dynamics, especially for an MPV. It does feel quite confident. Now, all these little updates, which do make quite a bit of difference to the car, they also make a difference to the pricing. You're looking at between 17 to 18 lakh rupees for the top-end variant, depending on where you're buying it. And that, I think, is quite a tall asking price, especially when you look at the competition. The newest entrant, of course, in this space is the Kia Carens. It simply knocks the ball out of the park in terms of the features it offers, in terms of the premium feel that it offers. The design, of course, is polarizing, but I think when you compare the two cars, the XL6 or even the Ertiga, that platform has started showing its age compared to that new age competition. So from that perspective, yes, that pricing seems like a tall ask. But when you add in the Maruti Suzuki peace of mind, that robust reliability, the resale value, the easy cost of ownership, the cost of service, the easy access to service, I think all of that combined will still continue to make this car quite a compelling buy for a lot of people out there. So will Maruti continue doing big numbers with the XL6 even with strong competition? Of course they will.